You're listening to Solar Insiders, a fortnightly podcast that shines the light on the world's biggest energy source. Solar Insiders is presented by Giles Parkinson, the editor of Renew Economy, and Sophie Vorath, the editor of One Step Off the Grid. And Solar Insiders is brought to you by Pylon, the essential solar design tool to grow your solar business with quick and effortless proposals that will impress your customers.
Hello and welcome to Solar Insiders. I am Sophie Vorath. I am the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid. And joining me again this week is Rachel Williamson.
Hi, Soph.
How are you, Rachel?
I'm well, hacking my way through the winter.
Yeah, it's got that real, I think every time, and this is probably a Melbourne thing, but I'm going to say it anyway. You get to about halfway through July, you're like, oh crap, this is winter. I remember.
And it's only been about 2 months. I remember when my mum said, when Mount Pinatubo blew up in 1992, she said it was just a year of winter and just mud constantly in the house. I think it's been 2 months. We're fine.
Yeah, we're fine. We're totally fine. But yeah, I can say that to myself. But I still need my little security heat pack on my lap. So this week, it's a little bit less exciting and sensational than the week of the battery rebate launch, but there's still plenty going on. And what I did was catch up with Hristodoulidis, who is the guru of distributed energy at the Clean Energy Council. And we did a bit of a check-in, pulse check to see how everything is going with the new rebate 1 week in. We have seen in the past some new rebates become very quickly very problematic in their short life. But he was very, and he, as you will hear, this has been very well engineered, albeit very quickly, to get it over the July 1 line. And it all seems to be going tickety-boo at the moment. And so we just have a chat about some of the patterns that are being seen and you know, a number of other things. And also, which is a really good topic, is where to next? Where are we going to put all of that energy that was going into, we need a rebate, now that we have it? And I think, as we discussed last week, Rachel, there's a lot left to do with houses to get them up to speed. So let's hear from Con, and we'll have a chat after that. Here's Con Hristodoulidis from the Clean Energy Council. Con Hristodoulidis, welcome to Solar Insiders.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. Last time we spoke, we were wishing fervently for a home battery rebate, and this time we have it.
Yeah, how good's that? How exciting.
It's amazing. These things can happen sometimes. And I know that it's happened because of a lot of the hard work that you guys at the Clean Energy Council, as well as the Smart Energy Council, and lots of amazing lobby groups like Solar Citizens have put in over years and years and years, and you know, helped with the design and informed all of that. So now here we are. You know, what, 1/3 of the way through July. So we're nearly, we're past a week since it came in.
Yeah, just over a week.
Just over a week. So I thought it would be a good time to check in and see how it's going, what you're hearing sort of from your members, which is the installers and so forth, and you know, just how the system's coping. I know that the Clean Energy Regulator put out a little notice saying, you know, not saying be patient, but just suggesting that, you know, it might take a little while for STCs to come through and for all of the things to fall into place. So how is it all going, Con?
Look, let me start with saying I don't think I've seen a program implemented by the Clean Energy Regulator and the department in 6 weeks like I have with this battery program. So it was actually amazing to see how quickly and efficiently they work. But 6 weeks not a long time, right?
No,
So
pretty impressive turnaround.
yeah, so they did everything they can to get it to start from 1 July and not to really have a significant impact on the market. So I think they need to be commended for the work that they've done and for where it got us. I think the policy announcement back during the election campaign where the minister allowed for the sale of these batteries but without them having been turned on till 1 July to claim the SCCs is a really good announcement that actually we start to see activity in the market really flourish through May and June. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the SunWiz data that came out for June, but the first time ever, we saw more battery sales than we saw solar sales. So, I mean, that's a really good sign that the consumers and the market have taken up the program, and I think it's just going to go faster and faster in terms of the sales.
I saw one installer, and I forget who, which is probably a good thing, saying that they'd already done 2 megawatts or something in the first week, which I imagine a lot of it would have been stuff that was sort of roughed in and not connected until the rebate came into play. So that's really amazing.
I think I'll use myself as an example. I had a solar battery system and got contacted by the retailer slash installer and said, "Hey, you interested in upgrading your battery?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So they're coming around next week for an extra 10 kilowatt hours onto my system. So I think there's a fair bit of that going on where they've already had contact with previous customers where they know they've installed a solar system or a solar battery system, which is quite a small battery system, and that's helped really get the market up and running because those people are probably the easiest to get to. They understand how the system works, and they've been on site. They know what it's like at site. So I think you'll see a fair bit of that activity going on in the early stages of the program.
Which raises a really interesting topic because we published a couple of stories when it finally came in last week, and one of them was sort of a what you need to know. And somebody wrote an email very quickly saying, "Oh, but I don't understand how it works with stacking. Can you stack? And if you've got this much, can you add this much?" And I think the concern was, can you go over the limit with stacking even? But so if you've I don't know, say if you had already a 20 kilowatt hour system battery, and then you wanted to add more, then it would go over the 50 kilowatt hour ceiling. Is that okay?
Uh, that's a good question. My understanding is the SS is only available for the additionality. So based on what you've just said then, I think you can actually stack whatever, say you've got 20 kilowatt hours. If you add another 50, I think you're entitled to the STC for the 50 kilowatt hours.
As long as it in that one install isn't over the amount.
Yeah, because the STCs don't apply retrospectively to what you've already had installed. It applies to the new install. And that's the conversations we've had with the clean energy regulator.
That's what I sort of thought, but I just wasn't entirely sure. But it's really interesting that you say that you think a lot of people will be upsizing the batteries that they already have. And, it's really interesting. I think also there'll be a lot of houses with solar that will be adding. But I think also it'll be, for a lot of people, the trigger to go all in for the first time to get solar and a battery and to start thinking about even, well, am I going to get an electric vehicle? What kind of battery will I get that'll be compatible? What inverter? So it's really gonna speed things up on a lot of levels, I think.
Yeah, look, the program said that they're looking to deliver 1 million batteries by 2030. I think they'll get that, and get that probably within the first 2-3 years rather than the 5 years of the program. Um, the difficulty obviously will be that they allocated $2.3 billion in the federal budget because the STCs are paid by the government, not recovered through the retailers' bills. So I suspect there'll be a discussion within the industry in the next 2 to 3 years to say, we need to top this up. I think the success of it, and I think when you see customers seeing their bills come down significantly, I think it'll be hard for the government to not continue to support this through to 2030. So but my gut feeling is we will definitely get that 2.3 billion and expire that, and I think we'll need to top that up before the 2030 end date.
Do you think it's possible they might wind up the solar rebate but keep the battery one going?
I think they've both got a finite date of 2030, so it just makes sense to run them concurrently because we talked about 4 million households with solar, but you're right, there'll be households out there who were on the borderline thinking, should I get solar? Maybe I'll wait. And I think that those people will now be making a decision for solar and battery. So, and that makes it quite an affordable package as well to get the rebate based off the solar and the battery system together. So I don't think it makes sense at this stage of, we're 5 years away, 4.5 years away, to take away one rebate and leave the other one there. I think I'll keep them both going to 2030.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Have you come across any glitches yet? Have there been any sort of concerns from installers or any areas where it's sticking or anything like that? I suppose it's pretty early to find that.
Yeah, it's pretty early. The Clean Energy Regulator put out a notice again about how many installs you can do on a daily basis. So I think that's probably the key. People just making sure that they're aware on, if it's one solar battery system a day, or if they're going back to um, start something that they've previously installed in terms of giving them the certificate of compliance. They can do, I think, it's up to 4 a day. So I think that's the important information people need to know so they don't exceed the limits that the CR's put in place. I think you're right about the STCs as well. There's going to be a bit of a lag because the Clean Energy Regulator really didn't have the opportunity to automate its system. They promised that they'll have that automated in the next couple of months, and that will then start having that cash flow coming through. So there's, while we're out there selling these things, or the market selling these things, there might be some tightness around cash flow early on. And as we go along, as I said, they've made some announcements already around what a stackable battery is and things like that. So as things come up, I think the Clean Energy Regulator has been acting nimbly and putting some advice out there to help the market to understand what they need to do when they go to site.
Is there a concern too about the way the industry is behaving, or do you feel like people have taken the message there? Because there were quite a few messages, both from the regulator and then from different states, sort of saying we're not going to tolerate any poor sales tactics, any shonky deals, any telling people that they can get things that they can't. Do you think that's being observed pretty well?
I've got my fingers crossed. I actually saw today the New South Wales government announced a ban on door knocking for under the energy efficiency scheme, which
That's today, was it?
yeah, an email came through today. So I think we're better established in the market. The early days of solar, we were still finding our feet. The market was trying to find the best way to deliver good quality and good price and good customer service. I think we've got better regulations in place. I think the product accreditation and the installer accreditation programs are now being well established. We're leaning into both those programs, so we're not developing a new program around it. So I got my fingers crossed. We're still, 8, 9 days in what we said, but I got my fingers crossed that, at this stage, the industry is behaving well in terms of sales practices, installation practices, product quality, all that type of stuff. But, look, you can only knock on wood, as they say, and see how things go.
And put a whole lot of things in place, which you guys have done. I mean, we'll come back to that because the Clean Energy Council is the one who monitors the actual products and do the listing and everything like that. And I'll come back to that now. But I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about the number of installs per day that people are allowed to do. What's the reasoning for that cap? Is that about making sure people do quality installs, or is it also about making sure the thing flows okay?
Yeah, I think it's the quality of installs that they're concerned about. Like, if you think about installing a solar battery system at somebody's home, realistically, if you're going to do a good job and follow the regulations and follow your accreditation procedures from an installation perspective, it would be hard to imagine that one, maybe two at best if you push it. Once sort of you can think that's a good job. Same if you're going back to issue the compliance certificates for something that you've already installed prior to 1 July. By the time you get to the site, you do the inspection, you drive to the next site. I think the number was 4. I can't remember. Don't quote me on the number, but again, it seems like a reasonable number of work you can do in a sort of 7-8 hour day. That I think make sure that you do the proper checks that you need to do on site to make sure that they have been properly installed.
And this is bearing in mind that it's similar. Well, it's the same as the rooftop solar rules, isn't it? That there has to be a person there that's supervising and signing off on it. They have to have the selfies and
Yeah.
proof that they've been there. They can't just sort of be at another site and, well, that's really interesting. That I did see that notice and wondered whether it was about the system coping or whether it was more about, quality control, which makes a lot of sense. Onto the equipment accreditation, there's an astounding number of batteries that are available under this, aren't there, that have been accredited?
Yep.
I forget the number now, but it's
750 products accredited. Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, I should say products. 750 batteries are accredited. Yeah. And I think our pipeline is either just on or just under 100. So in terms of either waiting to get accredited or going through the process of accreditation. So that's 850, getting close to 900 products. So that's a lot of choice,
It is a lot of choice.
which is great, right? That's what you want to see, the choice, and that creates competition. It keeps prices down. It avoids one of the issues that the government was worried about, seeing that prices of batteries going up to be able to, so the installer retailer captures the value of the STCs. When you've got competition out there, it's really hard to do that because you know your competitor is going to be passing the full STC through, so you're not going to be competitive in market. So uh, they're all good signs to have a healthy market like that.
Yeah. And are you getting any sort of feedback yet? Again, it's really, really early to say on the kind of brands that people are installing. Is there any data on that, on, what's being popular or what sizes or anything like that?
I've heard the sizes that you're starting to get sort of to that 15 to 20 kilowatt hours in terms
Wow.
of installation.
Yeah.
Um, my gut feeling is and I think it's a really good part of the policy announcement, that these batteries need to be virtual power plant capable.
Mm.
I think that allows the consumer, the customer who's installing it, to say, well, I might get a little bit extra because apart from serving my own needs, my own household, if I've got a little bit of excess capacity, there's going to be some value for me for that additional capacity back in, for pushing that back into the grid and getting paid for it. So, I think somebody said to me, everybody's maximizing every megawatt of hour that the solar PV rooftop is producing. So they're storing it and they're keeping it for themselves and pushing it back into the grid.
Yeah. And then if you factor in, EVs as well and electrifying more of the house, that's another consideration too. Our consumption might be at a certain level now, but if you're going to change to electric appliances and get an EV, it will be going up.
Yeah, exactly.
Although you'll also have that big old battery on wheels. So,
The interesting thing is also the feed-in tariff. I mean, feed-in tariffs have come down to pretty much zero. It's a bit over, 3, 4 cents, 1 cent in some jurisdictions. So that means that consumers are saying, well, rather than having excess solar in the middle of the day being pushed back into the grid, I can store it and then push it back into the grid during those peak periods when um, it's actually helping me because I'm avoiding the peak prices, but I'm also helping keeping the wholesale prices down because you're spreading that generation load away from the middle of the day to the evening. So that's a good thing too.
yeah, and it's really now your only chance at getting a decent feed-in tariff. It used to be the case that people could get really generous feed-in tariffs for all of the solar they exported, but that's just not the way things are now. And we've seen that at the same time as this battery rebate has launched, we've got tariffs coming down. So it's come down to 0.04 cents in Victoria per kilowatt hour. It's a bit more generous in other states like South Australia and New South Wales, but then they've got export tariffs that are coming in. And then we've also got all these retail price changes that are about to hit in August that I was trying to help my mum navigate yesterday. She's like, I got a letter from my retailer. And it's a whole confluence of things that are happening that are really going to make people think, I think I might get this battery.
I was the same. I'm on a time of use tariff, and between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m., it's 32 cents per kilowatt hour. If I can avoid 32 cents per kilowatt hour, I'm going to put that extra storage in and produce it myself and use it myself.
And it's a bit of a trap. I mean, the thing I worry about, because my mum does have solar, but I just think, because I thought, I'll put her on a flat tariff. And the person I spoke to, the retailer, I won't say who, said we won't have the flat tariff. It's,
I've heard the
ah,
same, that if you've got a solar or a solar battery system, you go on a time of use. Yeah.
yeah. And look, it's fair in some ways. My concern is for people who are less engaged and less aware that they might get caught out, using a lot when, there's some clouds in the sky and what have you, and their systems are not producing. But I suppose this is something we all have to navigate together, and retailers are going to have to be very careful to make sure that their consumers, their customers are informed about all of this. There's going to be some very, very busy call centers, I think, over the next couple of months. But batteries, again, it's a way to get around a lot of these problems: export tariffs, the absence of any feed-in tariffs, high prices in the afternoon, power outages, that they really do tick a lot of boxes.
Absolutely.
Do you think people are satisfied with the size of the rebate? Do you think we've jumped that hurdle, or do you think that there needs to also be quite a lot of really good finance offers to go alongside it?
I think it'll push a lot of people that were thinking about it into making the purchase. I think the rebate is a very generous, a third of the price. I mean, you starting to see those type of discounts in the market around Christmas time and Black Friday sales and things like that. So it's a good sized discount. So I think there'll be a lot of people that were just teetering on the border whether I can or should I do it from finance. It'll help make that decision. I think there's also some programs out there, like the West Australian program is a really good example where to help those lower income households, they're offering the loan arrangement. There's also the federal government's Household Expenditure Upgrade Fund, which also offers loans. And speaking to the CFC who administer that program, they were saying that they'll look at helping those lower households with financing, whether it's both the solar and battery system or it's the solar system to support the battery system. So there are other options like that out there to help with some financing, which are low interest rates, or in some cases no interest rates, depending on the jurisdiction. So I think those programs are out there to help those lower income households, which is a good thing.
And then for the other households, who aren't lower income, but let's face it, there's a lot of households that are struggling and a bit cash strapped at the moment. There are a lot of banks now that are offering more attractive or less horrible interest rates for clean energy products and even for home energy upgrades. That's another thing I was keen to talk to you about, because it feels like now that we've got this piece of the puzzle, the batteries in place, the discounted batteries, we do need to now focus more on driving energy efficiency in households and energy upgrades and thermal efficiency as well, just making houses smarter from the get-go, but also those houses that exist, especially rentals, that are just like glorified tents. What is that sort of the next big focus for industry groups like the Clean Energy Council?
Yeah, absolutely. And like all those groups you mentioned, there's not a one solution for them all. And the other unfortunate thing, or fortunate thing, depending which way you want to see, glass half empty, glass half full, they tend to fall with the state in terms of the authority to make decisions on how to support those households. So, I mean, the Victorian Energy Upgrade Program is going through a review through Solar Victoria. I think that review is timely. The Victorian government announced its what was it? They've renamed it. It was the Getting Off Gas, the Gas Substitution Roadmap announcements, which had some policy decisions in there for renters. Yeah, New South Wales had solar for apartments announced earlier this year. I think Queensland have got something similar. So you're starting to see these trickle through into the market, but they are going to be more jurisdictional based. It'd be great if the federal government can coordinate it all into one sort of major. Part of the work we did in our roadmap, we said it'd be great to have a national white certificate program, which is an energy efficiency electrification certificate program, and
Yeah, I
leaning into all
agree.
the different parts of the states. Because I think our members, the CEC members who are participating in this, are operating on a national scale. So if you think about the compliance cost of having to comply with 3 or 4 programs versus one program, that that compliance cost, it's a third or a half or even less if you have one scheme. That's savings in for the households and for them to be able to offer better deals to households. So ideally, a national program, white certificate scheme. If not, we'll continue to work with the jurisdictions to start pushing some of these reforms in place that help, as you said, lower income households, people in living conditions where it's hard for them to be able to buy, well, they can't buy into the solar battery program because the tenants are not landlords.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's always been on the radar for most in the industry, I think, but I think, and it is always talked about as this low hanging fruit, but it is actually not so easy to organize, is it? It is low hanging fruit in that the solutions are fairly simple and they're actually fairly low cost. Closing the thermal envelopes for homes can be very straightforward. But yeah, it's just, I think you're right. A nationally coordinated scheme would sort of make it a lot easier for people to get on board and for it to be policed. Like I really wasn't sure. I know that Victoria's announced these measures for rentals, which I think are great. Where they have to make sure that at the end of signing of a new lease that a house is properly insulated and that kind of thing. But I don't know how that's going to be policed. First of all, I'm sure there's a plan.
You say that because when you buy a secondhand car, it's drummed into you to go get it tested and verified and accredited through like an RACV here in Victoria or some
Oh, it
other.
has to be roadworthy.
It has to be roadworthy. So, rental properties, it should meet the same criteria, right? They should have some sort of standard that they operate, that it's livable and comfortable for the people moving into it, and having some sort of program like that makes sense. It has been a hard slog, though, to get these reforms.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with the battery thing in place, perhaps it's a time now we can go, okay, we've succeeded there. Let's put our focus into this and really try and, because again, not only is it vital for the standard of living for people, basic standard of living and health and safety and all of that, but, a huge part of the management of the grid. If we can make houses more efficient, that's going to be a really important part of how we better manage demand side, particularly if we're going to electrify and particularly if we're going to have these freezing cold winters.
And you actually make a really good point. Like, the distribution network has been built to cope with those 2 or 3 days in the middle of summer when we're, got 3 or 4 days in a row that's hot and it's really peaky. So we've got a lot of excess capacity on the distribution network. So the more energy we can push it, the more flexible we can make energy in the homes through storage and self-generation through rooftop solar, and then sharing that back into the grid. It actually lowers the cost for everybody. So if you make the decision you don't want to get a solar battery system, but you still electrify your house, you're still going to get the benefits of a cost per kilowatt hour coming down because we're better using the system rather than building it out because we're creating more peaks in it. So that's a really important point you make.
So what is next for the Clean Energy Council? I mean, it's not as if you haven't got a whole lot on your plate with all of those accreditations and everything, but is there a big sort of project, the next thing on your horizon that is the focus?
Yeah, so the two big things for us now are consumer protection. I think we've got the world of traditional energy retailers who are heavily regulated through very old consumer protections, and we've got these new entrants who are using things like the net CC to really guide good customer practice. And how do we mesh that into one system that is suitable for both the traditional retailer as well as the solar and battery VPP and products provider? I think that's really important. But the other big one, which I think you touched on it, not many households know about this stuff, and what we pushed out through our roadmap was an education fund, setting up an education fund. But it's not the government promoting it, but it's the government providing funds to local communities. Because if you think about who comes to your house, it's the installer that comes to your house. It's your neighbour. It's my mum relied on my nephew who was an electrician for advice. So they're the people that. So it's the ability to push, and local councils pushing resources into them and educating them and providing them with material to have these conversations when they can with households about the benefits of solar and battery, about the benefits of energy efficiency, electrification, because that's when you get the buy-in from consumers. At the moment, they'll see the rebate and they'll probably have somebody call them or knock on the door or send them an email, but we're not really seeing that active participation, as you said, in that thermal efficiency of the home. So to me, that's a really important part of a program where the government is educating the community. You know, I grew up during the 80s and 90s, and I remember when we were trying to go for a healthier lifestyle, and I remember Norm and Norm's lifestyle. Yeah, something like that's it. Simple, easy to understand, but it got the message across about eating healthy, having a healthy lifestyle. It's what we need. Like, we're going through this once in a lifetime transition in our economy, and it bewilders me that we don't have a Norm style campaign to educate people the benefits of electrification and self sufficiency through solar generation and storage in the home. So to me, that's the next wave as well.
Well, all you advertisers and budding advertising creatives out there, get cracking. I'm already having pictures of it, visuals. Yeah, I think that you're right. It's absolutely true. And I find even with, on my knowledge that I'm able to expose to through my work and everything, I still don't, there's still a lot of holes in my knowledge too. And when friends will come and say, I want to do this, I think, and sometimes it's the case of the more you know, the less sure you are kind of thing too. There's so many, I'm sort of aware in the fringes of my mind that there's so many different programs about and different discounts and then different combinations of technologies and, different retail offers. And so it becomes very bewildering very quickly.
Yeah. And that I touched on consumer protection. I mean, it'd be really great to see something like Energy Made Easy broaden it away from just providing a retail product that's for the consumption of energy, but also having a really good suite of virtual power plants and consumer energy resource lists for consumers. So it becomes this genuine one-stop shop that provides you this holistic solution for your home, not just who's your retailer for when you want to consume energy.
Yeah. And there are services out there. Solar Quotes is a good one, and there's plenty of things you can do your own research. But again, like you say, it sort of requires a little bit of knowledge already, and sometimes just even knowing where to start, what you need is just overwhelming enough to make you go, oh, well, I'll just stick with the same old retailer. I won't bother looking at solar, and I'll just use that old gas heater for one more year.
Complexity of market creates a lot of inertia in people, and you look at it and you see your prices, you see going up, and then you see your first bill come up, and you think, "Oh, that I've paid a lot more for the same amount of consumption." But where do I start? What do I Google? What do I look for? And that inertia means that you're not really acting. So anything that simplifies and breaks down that barrier for that inertia to go away and make it easy for you to search and find something that's suitable for you would be great.
Yeah. And having, as you were saying, education groups, advocates for consumers that are localized, even, your old community hall sessions where people can come down and look at stalls and hear different solutions and actually hear from people, from their mouths, rather than being confused by information online. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. And thank goodness we have advocacy groups like you around, and we can keep onwards and upwards. There's still so much to navigate. And yes, I think we'll have to check in with you again, Con, in, I don't know, maybe about 6 months' time to see how everything's going. Maybe then we'll have a better handle on how all of this is unfolding in the battery world.
We're in the midst of doing our biannual rooftop solar and storage report. So hopefully in
Oh, fantastic.
4 to 6 weeks, we'll have a bit more data about what's happening in the battery market as well from the cheaper home battery program. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have something for you and something to share with you very soon.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it. And thank you again for joining us.
It's a pleasure. It's always great to come on. Thank you, Sophie.
Well, that was Con from the Clean Energy Council, getting us up to speed with how everything's going with the first week of the brand new shiny battery rebate. And it all sounds pretty good so far. Any more stories you've heard out there anecdotally? Anyone, jumping on? I don't know anyone yet.
Getting a battery? No. I have one friend who's interested in anything to do with energy, and he's
Really?
he's the only one I could talk to about it. And I said something to him yesterday, and he just replied back, Vita G. And I was like, no, mate, it's too early for that. It's too early for that.
Rolling with the acronyms.
That is vehicle to grid. It is using your car as a battery. For those not in the know as yet.
Yes, well, we are still a way off from that, although, it's one of those things that seems like it's right there. You can see it. You just maybe can't quite touch it yet. Although,
according to the very experts, and, there is a small handful of extremely experts in Australia about this, the standards for certain categories of vehicle to grid batteries and connections and cybersecurity are not quite there yet and need a bit of work to be done first. So,
and what about the car OEMs? Are they still worried about batteries and life of batteries, if they're used for two-way flow.
One person said to me, vehicle to grid as a battery, as a home battery, will take off once no one cares about their battery anymore. So when it's just like a regular car, when, they're like, well, do what you want to it.
It's tough to say, though, because the battery is out and away the most
battery
expensive part.
is the IP. It is the car.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And some of them, I know that a lot of the Volvos have that cellular level health check where they can see if there's even a cell that is not performing as it should to watching all of the cells. But yeah, I don't imagine all of them have that. And yes.
I think the subtext was, it is a very long way away.
Yeah, but then again, yeah, you see people like the network saying that we're ready for it.
Yeah.
And
in terms of OEMs and car makers and so on, being comfortable for their vehicles being used for non-vehicle purposes and non-vehicle purposes in a variety of different locations and circumstances, that is a long way away.
Yeah. It seems like there'd be a lot of T's and C's on the contract if, like you can only use it this much and, never ever do this and never ever do this.
Must buy your electricity through this retailer, who we have a deal with, which, is reportedly happening in a pilot in Korea. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Which would make sense because I guess then you'd be able to keep better tabs on what's going on. But then again, it's not great if you want choice. And yeah, you happen to hate a certain retailer or something. Speaking of which, I had an interesting experience last week trying to help my mum look at different offers because and I won't name and shame the retailer that she's currently using, but it's going on everywhere. You see it all the time. But she got this notice saying, here's what you're paying, here's what you're about to pay in August. And then a tiny little note down the bottom says, and by the way, we've noticed you could be on a better plan with us. That would save you more than $1,000 a year. $1,000. It was just like, what? And I know that it's a thing and they have to do that now, but it's just this tiny little thing. And it's like, well, why on earth would you have her on this other one then? And when we tried to call, yeah, ages waiting. And then, you should probably wait till August because that's when we're changing the prices. And then,
No, you don't wait till August. It's like a credit card company saying, just wait till you've paid the fee and then we'll credit it back. No. Waive the fee now.
It was extraordinary. And then, what was it? I think it was Lumo. I thought I'd call them and see what they've got to offer. And I did not make it past the hold music, which is some sort of a calypso affair that I do feel like saying that if people are ringing because they're really depressed about their energy bill, this may push them over the edge. It was so relentlessly upbeat and like I'm on an island in the Caribbean. It was, I can't even tell you. So with all of my, I'll help you, Mum, I know this stuff like the back of my hand, I cracked it and gave up within about 40 minutes. Yeah. So, and I said, let's have a look at it next week. We'll give it another go. So yes, Godspeed to all the people out there trying to manage their retail. There, again, still a lot of work to do. We talk a lot about how much focus there is now on consumers within the energy industry. But I really think, a lot of work left to do. Like, how often do you actually speak to consumers and ask them how they're going?
It's almost as if there's a focus on consumers, but it is misplaced. The focus is on how to make consumers do what we industry or retailers or some company wants them to do.
Yeah.
Rather than being in consumers' interests. And that is at the basis of why people don't trust anything to do with their personal energy services, because they know at some point within the next 12 months and every 12 months, like clockwork, they're going to get screwed over.
Other news this week includes South Australia, which is the state where the network company, South Australia Power Networks, was, along with a few not-for-profit organisations, the first network company to ask the AMC to introduce export tariffs, the otherwise known AKA sun tax, which, as I mistakenly said and you correctly pulled me up on last week, isn't just in New South Wales, because now South Australia has it too.
No, I thought it was Victoria. So no, I was completely incorrect as well.
Well, we got there in the end between the two of us. But yes, South Australia's introduced it, which means that the retailers will now be charged an export tariff, and they can then decide what they will do with that vis-a-vis the customer. It's a little bit more complicated than the New South Wales ones in that it is, although I'm not even sure that's true, but it's basically, it only applies to a certain amount of kilowatt hours a day. So if you can keep your exports below that, it won't bother you. And it's also to do with obviously certain periods of the day, obviously, because that's when it's busiest. So yes, that's become a thing. And there was some outrage on the ABC mainly. But I think the general feeling is now, even though it does still seem not great to charge people for their solar that they're producing, and there will be better workarounds, and there are. Yeah, this is the way the market is headed, I think. And in Victoria, we don't have it, but we have virtually zero feed-in tariffs, so same. The message is basically use your solar or store it, and if you send it to the grid, send it when we need it, not when we don't.
Are community batteries making a dent in the excess that is being seen during the day? Because that was one of the promises.
That's a really, really good question, and I think that's a question we should ask some of the network companies, because it's one of the key reasons why they have said that they should be allowed to install them and be part of the federal rebate or subsidy. So it is a very good question, because you would think that in that case, but then again, it's still a regulated asset. It's an asset that all consumers have to pay for before it does its job. So it's a very good question, and I shall ask it of someone and get back to you.
And one of my other questions is, now that these export tariffs are in, given that there are promised workarounds in the future, community batteries and other options, do you think these tariffs will ever be removed, even when those workarounds and those other options?
Probably not, because it's going to become even more imperative that those signals are sent that we don't want to flood the grid with solar in the middle of the day, if at all possible. Not only because that creates problems with demand, but because if that happens to then go away, all of a sudden we're in a bit of bother. Probably not. But it probably will be something that most people are not affected by. The real concern is that we end up doing what I think that the rule had hoped not to do, and that was to, not have people who can't afford solar and can't put it on their roof for whatever reason pay for what the network augmentation to accommodate all of this solar. But what we might end up with, if we're not careful, is that all the people who can afford to will get batteries and will completely avoid all of this with storage, and as well as smart technology and smart management technology, and people who are engaged and what have you and have the time to engage will not be affected, whereas the people who perhaps installed solar thinking that it would cut their bills and really needing it to, will be the ones who end up having to pay export tariffs when they don't realise that it's being exported when they're at work or what have you. So I think that's one of the things that has been the most controversial about all of this, and a really unwanted, unintended consequence, which there always are, those lingering everywhere with every regulation change. You've got to be careful about this. So this is why there's been such a push for any battery rebate to really focus on lower income households, and for, and I'm sure that, not sure, but I'm sure that they are supposed to, retailers, consider hardship in these situations. So if there's a hardship customer with solar who cannot help but export during the day, then I'm sure there's a workaround in that sense too, or that there very much should be.
Yeah, I'm a bit skeptical about like knocking up to $3,000 off a battery is all well and good, but if it brings it down to $10,000 for a 5 kilowatt hour battery,
Yeah, and that's the bare minimum.
that's not going to be useful to anyone, and it's still extremely expensive.
Yeah, so which is where, and we've discussed this before, which is where good, zero interest or low interest finance offerings will come into play, and that's another area that we really need to get. I mean, there are plenty of them out there, not so many zero interest, I don't think, but there's definitely offerings from a lot of banks, and again, it's really beholden on the industry to make sure that people know about these and that people understand that there's access to these other things that can help them get across the line and get a battery, if that's going to make all of the difference, which it quite probably will. It's one thing to say, well, this is where the market's headed and everyone needs to go there, but it's another thing to make sure that people who in good faith invested in solar thinking that it was going to be the answer to all their energy bill problems aren't now suddenly in a whole different world of pain and frustration. Yes, so plenty of work to do still. We were also going to discuss, you had an interesting story this week over on Renew Economy about the visualizations of offshore wind.
Yeah, so the Victorian Energy Department came out with, they said they were new on the website, and then I got a call saying actually they're from March. So my apologies to readers. There are some visualizations. We had not reported on them before. And
New to the public, is that what we say?
New to the public, new to us. And they were showing that the wind turbines at their closest from 2 different beach vantage points. And
we're talking in Gippsland here.
In Gippsland, yes. And Mount Oberon and Wilson's Prom National Park, basically not visible to the naked eye. However, after we ran that story, I had 2 emails from people in a small town called Seaspray, and they are very concerned that actually their beach is going to be much closer to one of the declared areas in the proposed offshore turbines, and the Department of Energy is not taking these pictures, doing these visualizations from the right locations. So I'm going to go down there at the end of the month and just take a look from the beach, take some photos of my own, and find out what people have to say about how they feel the Department of Energy and the local offshore wind operators are actually
communicating with them and stuff. Yeah,
actually communicating and how they feel about that.
I mean, it's a huge task, and it's something that no one has done before in Australia. Well, they might have done it elsewhere and then come here, but it hasn't been done in Australia. So it's new territory, which needs to be trod very carefully. And yeah, saying one thing and then people feeling like they've been told another, or they haven't heard anything is not great. So that's to be avoided. But it'd be very interesting to hear what they say out there.
It will be interesting, and interesting to measure it against. Yeah, and interesting to measure against developers who are beginning to say pretty regularly, we are here to do something for the environment. We're not building a coal-fired power plant. We are trying to do the right thing. And none of the oil and gas platforms and drillers who have been all over the ocean offshore from Gippsland had to follow any of these processes and protocols, because it was a while ago when they weren't really asked to. And so there's some interesting pushback that's coming from, I think, a level of frustration amongst developers as well, where they're just saying, well, we want to do this, we want to do the right thing. So there's a lot more communication, I think, that needs to happen between people on the ground and the people living on the ground.
Yes, precisely. And I agree with you. I think there has been definitely a level of, what do you call it, double standard, I suppose, between the way the fossils were held to account and the way we are now, but which is not to say it shouldn't be at the level it is now. It absolutely should, but it is to say that, that we all need to communicate and work together and I guess not sensationalize things. Yeah.
And if you're angry about something, make a point of reaching out to the people who are in charge.
Yes, which is not always that easy. You could end up getting half an hour of calypso music and that could push you over the edge.
Or just completely ignored, as does happen to us sometimes as well.
Yes. Yeah, you put out all of the calls and the emails and get crickets back. So, yeah. Alrighty, well, that is it for this week. I would like to thank our sponsor, Pylon, and all of our listeners and readers. And I'd like to thank you, Rachel, for all of your wonderful insights as usual. And we will see you again in about a fortnight's time. Bye for now.
Solar Insiders was brought to you by Pylon. Pylon provides easy-to-use solar design software for solar installers and retailers with pay-as-you-go pricing, no monthly costs and no lock-in contracts. Join Australia's top solar companies who trust Pylon to design high-resolution, CEC-ready solar proposals.